Um, this video is about Bayan playing. Somebody requested some tips on how to play Bayan. So I'll try to explain or share my understanding whatever I have gathered from many years. So Bayan playing, just some general points. Yeah, I think Bayan playing is a critical part of tabla playing. And it is actually a topic that a lot of beginner tabla players, a lot of students, even intermediate tabla players, they have often tend to ignore Bayan. Many people focus on the daya, right hand side, because the a lot of the tirigita strokes, that kind of stuff more looks exciting from the right hand. So a lot of people focus on the right hand technique. A lot of people tend to ignore the Bayan a lot, right? And I also went through that. I think the importance of Bayan really came to my understanding, quite late in my my study of tabla. And so a few things on this, that one of the tips I got from one of my teachers was, even if you play very good, your right hand technique is really good, you will not sound that different. Your right hand, this daya strokes won't sound particularly different from anybody else, right? There's not much you can do to differentiate the sound in these strokes. But on Bayan you can, right? On Bayan is where you can provide your own creativity, your own expression, your own way of modulating Bayan. So this really becomes a very important topic, right? As you progress as a tabla player. So your aesthetics of the tabla really come from Bayan, not so much from the daya, right? Okay. So one point I will make, starting point about the basic stroke of playing ghe, the basic ghe stroke of the Bayan, because even this is something that took me a long time to really, after a lot of trial and error, to really find what works, but also what the good tabla players, the great tabla players, what they are doing. After observing them, hearing some of them talk about it, and observing their hands and stuff, I came to a couple of conclusions. So I'll start by telling you how I used to play. I used to try to play Bayan, the basic stroke. I used to try and do, put a stroke like this, more like from the wrist, right? More like this kind of a bouncing kind of a stroke. And the reason I did that is, in the beginning, I couldn't get much volume out of Bayan. I always felt like my volume in Bayan is not coming. So I used to try and really, like do this kind of stuff. So then this is all moving, shoulder is moving, elbow, this whole, doing this kind of stuff. Really a kind of an exaggerated movement. Now the thing is, this does not work. It does not work for a number of reasons. And it also doesn't sound good, right? Because if you play like that, you end up with this kind of sound. It doesn't sound good. More than that, it's not an efficient movement, right? Because all this is moving. It's really not the right technique. The right technique of playing Bayan, it's actually the basic ghe, it's actually a little tricky. And a little bit like the way I think about it, it's a bit like when we learn to play na on the daya. The first time we learn to play na here, it's even that is actually a pretty tricky movement, because the first time when we all started, the first time we tried to play na or tin, most of us have struggled, right? Because what we are doing is, we are playing this stroke here, but this finger is slightly muting the shihai, right? Then we get this nice clear stroke. If we don't mute, we get this kind of stroke. If it's too much mute, then you get a kind of a dead stroke. So there is a sweet spot, right? That just enough muting here, you get a nice clear stroke, right? A very similar thing is actually happening in the Bayan for playing the ghe, the basic ghe stroke. And I'll just try to show in the angle here, the way I try to do it. Similarly, so see, the wrist is resting here, and it's just slightly or lightly touching the black spot, the high, right? Similarly to how the third ring finger on the right hand is lightly touching the CI there as well. So when my fingers connect here, there is a slight muting. If I don't have that, then it just sounds like there's too much reverberation, right? But too much in, then it's too muted. So there is a sweet spot here as well, right? Right. There's another thing, just like when I played thin just now on the daya, you can play and lift your hand and it gives the nice resonance. Similarly, if you are putting some muting and then lifting off, you can get a nice resonant stroke from here that sounds good, and it's not too much reverberation and it's not too muted, right? And again, this is something that just needs practice, right? So that's the basic idea. Again, you need to really practice, through trial and error, find what works for you. But that's the basic principle, the way I have understood it. Next point I want to really make here is, again, through a lot of trial and error, I figured this out. I'm applying force when I'm playing Baya. The force, I'm not coming from the wrist even. I am doing everything from the knuckles. So this set of knuckles down is really where the force is coming from, right? Not from here, not anywhere, right? It's just here. This knuckle is really, same thing applies in Taya as well, by the way, right? And then with Baya, the wrist is critical, right? What you do with the wrist, your positioning of the wrist, it's very analogous to what the ring finger is doing in the Daya, right? In terms of, this is sort of controlling the resonance, right? Similarly, the wrist here is doing a lot of the beauty or whatever. It really comes from the wrist control over the CI. So because you can lift up slightly to have a more reverberant sound. You can press to get the modulation. So once you're in the flow or the groove of the Baya, and that's really what the role of Baya is, right? Is to create a groove. That's really the way you should think about it, like a bass in rock music. That's really what the role of the Baya is in tabla, right? Now this is really pressure. Mostly this is pressure, right? There's a little bit of sliding, but it's 90% pressure, right? Pressure. So there's exercises like this you can do, ghe, right? Now sliding, there is a technique of sliding, but this really comes in laggi, in what we call laggi playing, right? So laggi, what we call laggi dhati nadala, that's it. When you're doing that, that's really where the sliding, because you want this really a kind of aggressive stroke. But for most classical tabla playing, so kaida, tokra, gat, that type of stuff, you tend not to use that much technique. Typically you don't, right? So typically for kaida type play, it's a more subtle kind of a variation, right? So then it's mostly about pressure. But the real trick, I would say, is finding a way to make the Baya sound very open while being able to apply pressure at the same time. So at one point I used to play in a very muted way. My wrist was too much pressured, so my Baya never sounded a bit closed, right? Now, if you always just play in this open way, that doesn't sound good either. So it's really the opening, I think of it as opening and closing, like a breathing kind of. But the thing is, you have to have a nice resonant stroke to start with, so that there is a resonance there for you to work with, right? If it's too muted, there's nothing to work with, right? So in the beginning, as you're just getting used to this, I would say more resonance is better than less, right? So even if it sounds a bit robotic, that's okay in the beginning, right? as opposed to that's not preferred, right? So not recommended. So in that stroke just now, some of the pressure came, the sliding. So that can be there once in a, you can put it there, but in general, classical playing, we won't use that too much. Yeah, so to wrap up, just to recap, again, critical point that for me was a game changer for me was really getting good with the fingers, really putting, there's a video by Zakir ji, that he put on Instagram a few years ago called the Z Files, and there's one of those videos where he has talked about Bayan. I would really recommend to watch that video. He has really shown some nice things. One of the things he said in that video, which really stuck with me, is he said old ustads used to really dig into the Bayan, right? So it wasn't like this, it wasn't like a surface level, it was like, and that really comes from fingers, right? From the tips of the fingers really digging in, almost like closing your hand, right? Like this. And ideally, at least in Farrukhabad and Purab Gharana, we don't tend to do this. Delhi Gharana, they use the two fingers. We tend to use that. And this gives more volume, but it's up to you, right? Yeah, so it's a big topic and a lot of trial. You kind of have to really find what works for you. There's a lot of trial and error involved with Bayan. So good luck, and I'll please provide your comments. I'll be happy to provide any other tips if anybody needs. Thank you.